Elijah Thomas didn't speak much, not because he was shy, but because he didn't see the point in speaking when no one seemed to listen. He lived in a small apartment on the west side of Baton Rouge, near Florida Boulevard. The walls were thin, and the neighbors were louder than necessary. Elijah's mother, Carla, worked long shifts at a local health clinic. His older brother, Marcus, often hung out with a crowd Elijah didn't trust. But Elijah had music. Not a grand piano, not a high-end setup, just an old, battered keyboard at the community center down the street. Half the keys didn't work, and the power cord sparked if it was moved the wrong way. But to Elijah, it didn't matter. It was enough. Every afternoon after school, Elijah would rush to the center, fingers itching to play. No sheet music, no lessons, just the sounds that lived in his head and heart. Sometimes the music was joyful, sometimes angry, sometimes silent. No one taught him, but there are things that don't need to be taught. They just come naturally. At school, Elijah kept his head down. He wasn't a troublemaker, but he wasn't a standout either. Teachers often missed the way he tapped rhythms with his pencil during math, or the way his eyes lit up when the school anthem played in the morning. Most of the other kids didn't notice him, except when they needed someone to borrow answers from, or someone to tease. Elijah's only real escape was through music class with Ms. King, the music teacher at Martin Luther King Jr. Middle School. She was the only adult who truly saw him. She would catch him humming during lunch, pull him aside after class, and ask questions that made him think about chords, scales, and how to tell a story with his hands instead of words. "You hear the world differently than most people," she told him once, after Elijah improvised a lullaby for a pretend baby project. "Don't ever let that go." He didn't plan to let it go. Then, one Thursday morning just before spring break, the school announced a special event with Bayside Academy, an elite private school across town. The event was advertised as a community arts exchange, which meant Elijah's class would spend a day at Bayside, attending workshops and watching performances from their students. Most of the kids groaned at the idea, but Elijah sat up straight. Bayside Academy. He had heard of it. Rumors said their music department had a grand piano in every room. Elijah couldn't picture it. He had never touched a real piano before. He had seen one once at the downtown concert hall when his class got free tickets to the symphony. It gleamed under the stage lights, like something out of a dream. That Thursday morning, Elijah could hardly contain his excitement. He woke up earlier than usual, his heart racing as he pulled on his favorite jacket, the one with the faded sleeves from years of wear. The ride to Bayside was long. Elijah sat quietly in the back of the school bus, his fingers drumming on the seat in front of him. He kept imagining what the music room would look like. Would there be a grand piano? Or maybe something even more amazing? When they finally arrived, the students of Bayside were already waiting, standing in neat rows with their uniforms perfectly pressed. Elijah noticed how different they looked. Polished, like a picture in a magazine. Elijah felt a lump form in his throat. He had never felt so out of place. But then, as they walked into the music building, something caught his eye. A hallway lined with black and white photographs of former students, most of them with musical instruments in their hands. "We have some of the best music programs in the country," one of the Bayside students said, as if sensing Elijah's hesitation. "You'll see." The first part of the day was a tour of the facility. Elijah tried to focus on what the guide was saying, but his attention kept drifting to the grand piano in the corner of one of the rehearsal rooms. It looked even more magnificent up close. "That's our pride," the tour guide boasted, noticing Elijah's gaze. "Only the best for our students." Elijah couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. He had always wanted to touch a real piano, but never imagined he'd be in a place like this. After the tour, the students were split into small groups for the workshop. Elijah's group was assigned to a music theory class, and they sat around a large table covered with sheet music and piano scores. The teacher, Mr. Richards, was a tall, middle-aged man with a calm demeanor. He greeted them with a warm smile and began talking about harmony, intervals, and the magic of music. Elijah listened intently. As the class progressed, Elijah began to feel something he hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of belonging. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't just a kid from the wrong side of town. He was a musician. "Elijah, would you like to try something?" Mr. Richards asked, noticing Elijah's focused attention. "I have a piano in the next room. Why don't you come and play for us?" Elijah hesitated. He had never played for anyone except himself, not even Ms. King, but there was something about Mr. Richards's invitation that made him feel like it was the right moment. Slowly, Elijah walked into the next room, his heart beating faster with each step. The grand piano sat in the middle of the room, as beautiful as he had imagined. He sat down and for a few moments just stared at the keys. Then, with a deep breath, he placed his fingers on the keys and began to play. Elijah's fingers danced over the keys, the notes flowing out in a way he had never experienced before. It was as if the music was coming from somewhere deep inside him, a place he had never known existed. He lost track of time, completely absorbed in the sound of the piano. For a moment, the outside world faded away, and it was just him and the music, blending together in perfect harmony. When he finished playing, there was a silence that hung in the air for a few seconds. Then, Mr. Richards broke it with a soft clap, his eyes shining with approval. "That was beautiful, Elijah. You've got a real gift." Elijah felt his cheeks flush. He wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone like Mr. Richards. But the praise felt different. It felt real, like he was finally being seen for who he truly was. "You should consider auditioning for our music program," Mr. Richards continued. "You have the potential to go far." Elijah swallowed hard. He had always dreamed of performing on a grand stage, but he had never imagined it could actually happen. Could he really be good enough for Bayside's prestigious music program? As the day went on, Elijah's mind raced. He couldn't stop thinking about the audition. The idea of it both terrified and excited him. But in the back of his mind, there was also a nagging doubt. Could he handle the pressure? Could he live up to the expectations of a school like Bayside? At the end of the workshop, the students gathered for a final discussion. Elijah sat in the back, quietly absorbing the conversations around him. A few students were talking excitedly about their upcoming performances, while others were discussing the latest trends in music theory. "You've got what it takes, Elijah," one of the students said, noticing him sitting quietly. "Don't sell yourself short." Elijah smiled, but didn't respond. He wasn't sure if he believed it. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. That night, as Elijah lay in bed staring up at the ceiling, his mind kept replaying the events of the day. The music, the compliments, the piano. It all felt like a dream. Was this really his life now? Was he really on the path to becoming a musician? Or was he just a kid from the wrong side of town, pretending to be someone he wasn't? Elijah turned over, closing his eyes. He wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, he was willing to find out. The next day, Elijah couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. He went through his usual routine at school, but his mind kept drifting back to the music program and Mr. Richards's words. After class, he found himself wandering towards the music room. He didn't know why, but it felt like a calling. Inside, the room was empty, the soft glow of the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Elijah walked up to the grand piano, his fingers itching to play again. He sat down, his hands resting on the keys, and for a few moments, he simply let the silence surround him. The weight of the moment settled in, and for the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace. Slowly, he began to play, letting the music flow out of him, just as it had the day before. It was like the piano had become an extension of his soul, expressing emotions he couldn't put into words. Just as Elijah was getting lost in the music again, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He stopped, his heart skipping a beat. "You know," a voice said, "you play like someone who's meant to be here." Elijah turned around to see Mr. Richards standing in the doorway, a warm smile on his face. "I thought I'd find you here." I just needed to practice," Elijah said, feeling a bit embarrassed. He wasn't used to being observed while playing. Mr. Richards walked over to the piano, sitting down beside him. "You've got a natural talent, Elijah. But talent alone won't get you where you want to go. It's about discipline, practice, and heart." Elijah nodded, trying to absorb every word. "I don't know if I'm good enough." Mr. Richards placed a hand on Elijah's shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect right now. Just keep pushing yourself. Keep working, and don't let anyone tell you you're not enough." The sincerity in Mr. Richards's words resonated deeply with Elijah. For the first time, he felt like someone truly believed in him. "Thanks, Mr. Richards," Elijah said, his voice soft, but filled with a new sense of determination. As Elijah left the music room that afternoon, he felt different. He wasn't sure where this journey would take him, but for the first time in a long while, he was ready to find out. The days that followed were a blur of school, practice, and more practice. Elijah dedicated every free moment to playing the piano, trying to perfect every note, every chord. He didn't tell anyone, but deep down, he was terrified. What if he wasn't good enough? What if his dreams were too big for him to reach? One evening, as Elijah practiced at home, he heard a knock on the door. His mother's voice called from the living room. "Elijah! Someone's here to see you!" Elijah put down his hands from the piano and went to the door, confused. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Mr. Richards standing there. "Mr. Richards, what are you doing here?" Elijah asked, still caught off guard. Mr. Richards smiled warmly. "I wanted to check in on you. You've been working hard, and I wanted to see how you're doing." Elijah felt a rush of emotions. I'm trying, but sometimes it feels like I'm not making any progress." Mr. Richards stepped inside, his presence calm but confident. "Let's see how you're doing. Play something for me." Elijah hesitated but then nodded, walking back to the piano. His hands hovered over the keys for a moment before he began to play. He played the same song he had been practicing for weeks, the one that had both inspired and frustrated him. Each note felt more fluid now, but still there were moments where his fingers stumbled. When Elijah finished, he looked up at Mr. Richards, who was silent for a moment. "You've made incredible progress," Mr. Richards said finally. "I can see it in your hands. The music is starting to flow more naturally. But remember, perfection is not the goal. It's the passion behind the music that matters." Elijah felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been so focused on getting every note perfect that he had forgotten what it meant to enjoy the music. "Thank you, Mr. Richards," Elijah said, his voice filled with a new sense of clarity. Mr. Richards smiled again. You're on the right path, Elijah. Just keep playing from the heart. As Mr. Richards left that evening, Elijah felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in a long time. For the first time, he wasn't worried about being perfect. He was just ready to be himself, to let the music take him wherever it was meant to. The next few months passed in a whirlwind of rehearsals and performances. Elijah found himself improving every day, his confidence growing as he continued to pour his heart into the music. One afternoon, as Elijah was walking through the hallways of his school, he overheard a conversation that made his heart race. "Did you hear? Elijah's going to perform at the state competition next month," one student said. "Really? That's amazing. I didn't know he was that good," another replied. Elijah froze in his tracks, unsure of how to react. He had kept the news to himself, not wanting to draw attention, but now everyone seemed to know. As he walked to his next class, his thoughts raced. What if he wasn't ready? What if he messed up on stage? The pressure was mounting, and Elijah felt the weight of it all. That evening, when Elijah returned home, his mother noticed the worry on his face. "Elijah, what's wrong? You've been so quiet today." Elijah sat down at the kitchen table, his hands nervously fidgeting. "Mom, I don't know if I can do it. The competition, it's coming up so fast, and I'm not sure I'm good enough." His mother smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. "Elijah, I've seen you work harder than anyone. You've come so far. It's not about being perfect. It's about doing your best and sharing your passion with others." Elijah looked at her, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. She was right. It wasn't about winning. It was about the music, the experience, and the journey he had been on. "Thanks, Mom," Elijah said, smiling for the first time that day. "I think I'm ready." The next few weeks were a blur of practice and preparation. Elijah poured everything he had into his music, determined to give the best performance of his life. The night of the competition arrived, and Elijah was nervous, but this time the nerves felt different. They weren't the fear of failure, but the excitement of finally sharing his passion with others. As Elijah stepped onto the stage, the lights shone down on him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt at peace. He wasn't afraid anymore. He was ready. His hands touched the keys, and the music flowed out of him, as natural and effortless as breathing. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't matter. It was beautiful because it came from the heart. As the final notes echoed through the auditorium, Elijah stood up, his heart racing. The crowd erupted into applause, and Elijah couldn't help but smile. He had done it. He had shared his music, his soul, with the world. And in that moment, he knew that he had already won. After the competition, Elijah felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never experienced before. The applause, the admiration from the audience, it all felt like a dream. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind of congratulatory messages and interviews. His phone never stopped ringing, and his social media was flooded with comments from fans and strangers alike. Elijah's heart swelled with pride, but at the same time he couldn't help but feel a little overwhelmed. He had always been a quiet, humble person, and all of this attention was new to him. One evening, as Elijah sat in his room, scrolling through his messages, he received a text that caught his attention. It was from Ms. Bennett, his music teacher. "Elijah, I'm so proud of you. You were incredible at the competition, but I think there's something more for you. A bigger opportunity awaits." Elijah's heart skipped a beat. What could this opportunity be? He couldn't help but wonder. The next day, Ms. Bennett called him. There's a prestigious music academy in New York, and they are holding auditions for a select group of students. I think you should apply." Elijah couldn't believe his ears. New York? The idea of studying at such a renowned institution seemed too good to be true. "I don't know, Ms. Bennett. It feels like a big step. I've never imagined myself going that far." "Elijah," she said gently, "this is your chance. You've got the talent, the passion. It's time to take the next step and show the world what you can do." Elijah sat in silence for a moment, thinking about it. Could he really go to New York? Could he leave his family, his friends, and everything familiar behind? But then he thought back to the night of the competition, the way the music had felt in his hands, the way he had shared his soul with the audience. This was his calling. This was his path. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll apply," Elijah said, a new sense of determination in his voice. Ms. Bennett was thrilled. "I knew you'd make the right decision. I'll help you with the application process. We'll make sure everything is perfect." And so, Elijah began preparing for the next chapter of his journey. As he sat down to write his application essay, he realized that his story wasn't just about music. It was about his growth, his struggles, and his passion for creating something that could touch others. This was more than a scholarship. This was his future. Elijah spent the next few weeks working tirelessly on his application for the prestigious Music Academy in New York. Every day he practiced his music, refining his technique and preparing for the audition. The pressure was mounting. He was constantly torn between perfecting his performance and finding time to write his personal statement. He wanted to make sure everything was perfect. One evening, after a particularly grueling practice session, Elijah sat down at his desk, staring at the blank page in front of him. He didn't know how to begin. His thoughts raced. What could he say that would set him apart? What made him different from all the other talented musicians applying? And then it hit him. He didn't need to try to be like everyone else. His story was unique. The challenges he had overcome, the dreams he had pursued, they were what made him who he was. Elijah began to write, his fingers flying across the keyboard. He wrote about his humble beginnings, the struggles he had faced growing up, and how music had always been his escape. He wrote about the moment he realized music was his calling, the day he stepped onto the stage at the competition, and how he had found a piece of himself in every note he played. As he finished the essay, Elijah felt a sense of relief. It was done. It was the most honest, raw part of himself he could share with the world. He submitted the application with a sense of finality, but a part of him couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would they accept him? Would he be able to stand out among so many talented musicians? Days turned into weeks, and Elijah heard nothing. The anticipation was unbearable. His life felt like it was on hold, waiting for the decision that would change everything. Finally, one morning, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Elijah's heart raced. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Elijah?" The voice on the other end was warm and professional. "This is Maria, from the New York Music Academy. We've reviewed your application, and we'd love to offer you a spot in our next class." Elijah felt his entire world shift. It was real. It was happening. "Thank you. Thank you so much," Elijah stammered, overwhelmed with emotion. "This is the best news I've ever heard." "We're excited to have you, Elijah. Your talent is undeniable, and we believe you'll thrive here," Maria said warmly. "We'll send you all the details soon, but we wanted you to know right away." Elijah could hardly contain his joy. He had done it. He had earned his place at one of the most prestigious music academies in the world. As the call ended, Elijah sat in silence for a moment, reflecting on how far he had come. It wasn't just about the acceptance letter, it was about the journey, the growth, and the person he had become along the way.